Liz Truss was different to what we had before. What have you made of her presence at conference?
I haven't seen Liz at the conference, but it is interesting that she's here. I understand she's not taking many questions from the press, and I think that's a wise thing to do.
It's always interesting. It's like that Morecambe and Wise joke, all the right notes but in the wrong place. So it's timing and judgment was off. It's not that she didn't have something interesting to say, but it was down to the way that she did it.
Do you think she damages the party?
I think her policies coming into trying to be selected as leader sounded good. They were well-rounded. I think the actual outworking of that was a disaster.
What do you make of Liz Truss's presence at the Conservative Party conference?
Liz actually was a friend of mine and still is a friend of mine, and I think it's sad in a way as to the way she's been treated by the media, particularly social media. However, I think Liz has something to offer. She's had a lot of jobs in cabinet, so a lot of experience. And the fact that people ask that question, I think is maybe not fair. She's a member, and any member can come, and she'd be welcome like any other member. She has her opinions, like any member has opinions, and her opinions may not chime with what the public thinks. However, I think they're useful to listen to as part of the overall mix.
Well, it's for Liz Truss to make that decision. She's a party member. She's a former MP.
Do you think it damages the party?
I think we're a broad church. So what I don't want to do is to defame a former colleague. There are those who think that her presence is not helpful. There are those like me who feel that we're a broad church and that we need to be inclusive rather than exclusive. Liz Truss still has something to offer. She still has a view which pervades with some party members. She clearly got it wrong in government, which is very sad for her and for the rest of the country. But we've got to learn those lessons. You've got to work with the institutions. You've got to make sure that any policy you put together is credible. And you've got to sell it ultimately. So whether Liz is here or not is a matter for her.
I haven't paid any attention to it. She's, days gone by. Obviously she had a huge impact and people are still recovering from that. But the fact is, we just need to ignore her now. We need to focus on the future of our party, not the past.
I think what all of that shows is that the Labour majority, and of course on the statistics, it was a win on a very low percentage of the national vote who actually voted. I think it shows that they basically have no solid foundation, and their majority could shift very, very quickly because of what has happened recently. And clearly, the Labour Party have a massive majority, but they have left-wingers and others who are going to become, I think, more and more upset as their programme continues. And of course, the fact that Rosie Duffield, a Kent MP, left the Labour Party is of some significance. She had stayed with them despite...
Real politics, free Palestine, yeah. Free Palestine.
We'll talk to you after, man.
Talk to me right now, brother. Free Palestine.
Excuse me,
forget Israel.
I'm doing an interview now.
Israel, free Palestine.
I'm doing an interview now. And our country needs to be free of bigots, I have to say. But the fact that she left the Labour Party as she has done, I think is an example of actually a malaise that the Labour Party has.
Are you concerned about the threat of reform to the Conservative Party?
I think everybody is. Ultimately, the issue that we'd like to see is, bearing in mind we're a broad church, embracing them rather than coming up against them, if that makes sense. Not all reform members really want to be part of the Conservative Party, but some do. And I think ultimately if we can get to the right point with them, we'll be able to deal with an ability to deliver perhaps a new government in a few years' time that is perhaps more encompassing of our views and accepting the fact that we're a broad church from right through to roughly marginally left of middle.
Did you pay much attention to the Reform conference when it was on a couple of weeks ago?
No.
Okay, just because MPs from the stage were peddling outy conspiracy theories. So I'm curious as to what it is that you think you should incorporate from Reform, or how to attract those members, because what Reform is dishing out to its members and I guess people who they want to vote for them is quite extreme, I would say.
Well, I think the Conservative Party is an old pair of shoes, quite comfortable. We can walk in them really well. Reform's just put on a new pair of shoes. Well, after they've done a couple of miles, they'll see where their blisters are and maybe change them and perhaps repair it. I think Reform has yet to decide what it wants to say and what it wants to do specifically, rather than follow the doctrine of a really powerful and strong and vocal leader.
I like that line about the shoes. That's a good. That's a good one. You're wearing a rainbow badge, a rainbow Tory badge. How do you feel about some of the language some of your Conservative colleagues use about LGBT issues, particularly trans issues?
I've always called it out. I've always been, telling, members of Parliament that I have in my area and other people, I don't agree with this language. You can have different opinions on these subjects, but you can do that in a way that doesn't offend everyone. You can talk about these things and have very different viewpoints. That's what we're here for, to discuss ideas. But that doesn't mean you need to alienate people. That doesn't mean you need to be cruel to people to try and, win over people that probably agree with you already. I just think it's horrible, some of the language that's been used.
Which language in particular do you object to?
I mean, maybe not particularly on social issues, but I think when people say, a man is a man, a woman is a woman, the majority of people agree with that concept. No one's disagreeing with that. Maybe a very slim group of people are disagreeing with that as a concept, but I think that just really, it appeals to something that doesn't exist, really. I think it's just a really dangerous comment to make, in particular. I think that one in particular is one that I find quite offensive, not because I'm trans or anything, but because friends of mine are trans and people who I know are trans, and they find those comments, particularly upsetting. And it doesn't mean that I have to be, entirely on the pro-trans side. I am. But even if I was a more, gender-critical person, that means I can still go about it without offending trans people as well, and just having a normal conversation about it, which is what we're supposed to be doing here.
My last question for you, are you concerned about wokeism?
About what?
Wokeism.
I'm not quite sure what that is. I look forward to seeing a definition of it.
You've heard of woke?
I've heard of some ideas that come from this thing called wokeism. As I said, I don't really know what it is, but there are some ideas which are clearly against human nature.
What are those ideas?
So, for example, this idea that everyone should have an equality of outcome, regardless of who they are. Because as someone who went to one of the poorest state schools in the country, who miserably failed his GCSEs and A-levels and went on to go to university as a mature student and build a life from that. I recognise in my own life and the lives of others the importance of personal hard work and personal responsibility. We should not be victims. We should engage with the opportunities that our great country has to offer, and there are many, many great opportunities, even though it's raining.
Thank you for your time.
Not at all.
Lovely to meet you.
Keep up the great work.
Thank you so much. What do you make of the term woke?
What does it mean? I have no idea what it means. Seriously, I sometimes call myself woke, not because I particularly identify with everything woke people say, but from what I understand, they're going in it in, they're concerned about people, they want to help people, and although I disagree with some of the ways that woke people sometimes go around it, that doesn't mean I need to throw a label at them and just sort of, it's a dismissive label, and I just don't think we should be using that. We should be engaging with debate with other people and trying to figure out the real issues at hand in our country today, and not just dismissing them as woke. I think it's a really harmful term and a waste of time.